My niece Sophie was staying with me for the week, which just so happened to coincide with her 5th grade school's mock economy market day. That evening, she dumped her backpack onto my hardwood floor in a chaotic cascade of erasers, plastic jewelry, and crumpled paper. "Aunt Margot, look at all the stuff I bought with my school bucks today." Amidst the colorful junk, a heavy embossed navy blue binder caught my eye. The gold lettering on the front read, "Closing Documents" and title. What on earth? I picked it up, letting out a soft laugh. Which kid brought their parents' real estate portfolio to a school market? If their mom finds out, they are going to be grounded until college. I flipped the heavy leather cover open, expecting to see a random address. Instead, the typed ink on the grant deed hit me like a physical blow to the chest. 101 Maple Drive, Oak Creek Estates. It was the exact address of the house I had purchased a year ago. The house that was supposed to be my marital home. But my name wasn't on the deed. The listed owner was Heather Wright. My palms grew instantly damp. The air in my living room suddenly felt too thin to breathe. I pulled out my phone and texted my fiancé. "Who is Heather Wright?" The 3 gray typing bubbles appeared. They danced on the screen for a long, agonizing minute. "Just a single mom in the accounting department," he finally replied. "A colleague." "Why?" I stared at the screen. He had taken the home I paid for and transferred it to her. A colleague? If a colleague merited a 4-bedroom colonial in the best school district in the state, then it was high time for the fiancé to step down. Oh, I typed back. My phone remained silent after that. I took a clear photo of the deed, saving it to a hidden folder on my phone. But I didn't call him. I didn't scream. It wasn't that I didn't want to, it was that it felt entirely futile. A man who casually signs away $1 million home to another woman doesn't have innocent intentions. There was no misunderstanding to clear up. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a notification from Sophie's PTA Facebook group. "Hi parents," the teacher wrote. "Did anyone's child accidentally sell a blue binder containing legal documents today? The mother is frantic. Please reach out to her directly at this profile." I clicked on the link profile. The profile picture was a glowing sun-drenched family of 3. My thumb hovered over the screen. I sent a friend request. She accepted it almost immediately. "Hi there," her message popped up. "I think my niece might have your documents. Let me know when is a good time for me to drop them off. I am so sorry for the trouble. Kids will be kids." Her tone was polite, sweet even. I didn't reply right away. Instead, I clicked on her profile picture and zoomed in. The man in the photo, smiling warmly, his arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders, was my fiancé, Colin. A quiet, ringing sound started in my ears. Over the last few months, I had booked 3 separate appointments for our engagement photos. Colin had bailed on every single one. It was always a sudden crisis at work, an emergency meeting, an unavoidable late shift. Our wedding was mere weeks away, and we still didn't have a single portrait together. But he had time to play dress up for a family photo shoot. My hand was frighteningly steady as I began to scroll through her timeline. Her cover photo was the same family portrait. The newest post was from 2 days ago. "So grateful to a certain someone for skipping work to support my little guy at his school sports day." The attached photo showed Colin hoisting a laughing little boy onto his shoulders. Colin's smile was blinding, radiant. It was a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in over a year. 2 days ago was the day I had begged him to come to my final wedding dress fitting. "I'm swamped, Margot," he had said, irritation bleeding through the phone line. "Just handle it yourself, okay?" I scrolled down. Next post. 3 days ago. "Today is my birthday. Finally, someone is making sure I get the fairy tale I deserve." The photo was a beautiful artisanal mango cake. Beside it sat a handwritten card. "You need to love yourself just as much as you love your son. Happy birthday. I'm always here." There was no signature, but the handwriting was unmistakably Colin's. The sharp slant of his T's, the looping Y's. It was a funny coincidence. 3 days ago, Colin and I had gotten into a massive argument about his constant absences. He had come home late, smelling like guilt, holding a slice of mango cake in a little cardboard box as an apology. I had eaten the leftovers of another woman's birthday cake. My eyes began to burn, a sharp stinging heat behind my eyelids. But I couldn't stop. I kept scrolling. I dragged my finger up the screen until a specific photo stopped my heart entirely. Half a month ago. A random rainy Saturday. I had woken up in the middle of the night with blinding, agonizing pain in my abdomen. I had called Colin's phone 12 times. It went straight to voicemail. I ended up calling an ambulance for myself, riding alone in the back of the rig, and undergoing emergency appendectomy surgery at 4 a.m. He never checked in. The next morning he had sent a casual text. "Drank too much with the guys, crashed at a hotel. Need something?" But the photo on Heather's timeline showed the stark fluorescent lights of an ER. The clock on the hospital wall read 3 a.m. In the picture, Colin was sitting in a plastic chair, holding a little boy who was hooked up to N4. A single tear slipped free, splashing hot and heavy onto my phone screen. I sniffled, wiped the glass clean and kept scrolling. I sat there for over an hour. In that time I only made it through the last 6 months of her life. On this timeline, in this digital universe, they were a beautiful, deeply in love family. And I was just a thief, hiding in the dark, peering through a window at a life that belonged to me. Are you there? Heather's text popped up, breaking the spell. Yes, I'm here, I typed back. Are you living at the Maple Drive address now? I can swing by and drop the documents off. Yes. She replied instantly. Thank you so much. You're a lifesaver. My finger hovered over the keyboard. She was already living there. Whenever I asked Colin when we could move in, he told me the renovations were delayed. When I pushed to just go see the bare walls, he snapped at me. Margot, do you not trust me? He had yelled, his face flushed with manufactured indignation. Are you worried I'm going to steal the place from you? If you're going to hold your money over my head, maybe we shouldn't get married at all. I had actually apologized. I bought him a pair of limited edition Nikes to smooth things over. All while another woman was making breakfast in my kitchen. You must do very well for yourself, I typed, feigning casual conversation. Oak Creek Estates is gorgeous. I could only dream of living there. It was the premier neighborhood in the county. The amenities were unmatched, and it was zoned for the elite elementary school. Oh gosh, no, she replied, attaching a blushing emoji. My partner bought it. He wanted the best school district for my son. I was so shocked when he gave me the deed. Her absolute joy practically radiated through the pixels. I forced the corners of my mouth up into a hollow smile. When are you free tomorrow? I'll bring it by. We have the whole weekend off together. Just shoot me a text before you come. Her company gave them the whole weekend off. Colin had explicitly told me his new promotion required him to work Saturdays. It was blindingly obvious now where those Saturdays went. Sounds good, I replied. I wanted to see it. I needed to see what my home looked like. The next morning I dropped Sophie back off at my sister's house. I drove to Oak Creek Estates, parking my car half a block away from the house. I pulled out my phone and texted Colin. Where are you? 10 minutes later the reply came. At the office, Margot. I told you I have to work Saturdays now. The sheer irritation in his tone jumped off the screen. I looked up through my windshield. Not 50 yards away, Colin was walking out the front door of my house, holding a little boy's hand, with Heather leaning affectionately into his side. I laughed. A quiet, breathless, broken sound in the empty car. I looked down and texted Heather. Hi, I'll be there in 30 minutes. Perfect. 30 minutes later, I pulled into the driveway. Heather stepped out of the driver's side of a silver Volvo SUV to greet me. Seeing the car, a bitter chill washed over me. 6 months ago, while I was out of town for a conference, Colin told me he had hydroplaned on the interstate and totaled the Volvo I had bought him. I had been hysterical, terrified for his safety, crying on the phone, just grateful he was alive. He claimed he walked away with just a few scratches, but the car was a total loss. He said the junkyard took it 3 days later. It wasn't in a junkyard. It was parked in my driveway with a child's car seat in the back. I took a deep, stabilizing breath, grabbed the binder and walked up the front steps. Thank you so much for coming all this way. Heather smiled warmly, taking the binder. Please come in for a bit. Let me get you some coffee. It was probably just a polite pleasantry, but I stepped over the threshold anyway. While she busied herself in the kitchen, I stood perfectly still, taking in the living room. It was my Pinterest board brought to life. The hours I had spent agonizing over color swatches and furniture layouts. It was all here. The cream-colored boucle sofa. The geometric black and white area rug. On the massive bay balcony, there was a small wicker swing chair surrounded by vibrant, blooming kalanchoe flowers. Have a seat, she said, handing me a mug. My fingers trembled slightly as I took it. The interior design is stunning. I kept my voice light, breezy. Do you mind sharing the name of the design firm? I'd love to use them. Heather tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, looking a bit sheepish. Oh, I actually have no idea. My partner handled all of it to surprise me. Let me ask him later and I'll text you the contact info. I didn't hear her. My eyes were locked onto her earlobe. She was wearing a tiny, delicate 4-leaf clover stud. Noticing my stare, she reached up and touched it, a faint blush creeping up her neck. It's a little worn out, I know. My partner gave it to me. He said it brings good luck. My heart felt like it was caught in a vice grip. It didn't hurt exactly. It was just a profound, crushing ache. That earring was the first birthday gift Colin ever gave me. I remembered him standing behind me, his hands shaking slightly as he fastened the clasp, his arms wrapping around my waist. Margot, the clover means luck, he had whispered against my hair. I'm giving all the good luck I have in this lifetime to you. I had lost one of the studs a year ago. I had spent days crying, tearing the apartment apart, eaten alive by guilt. I swallowed the sandpaper in my throat. Your husband is very good to you. At the word husband, her expression faltered. A flash of something unnatural crossed her face. Actually, he's not my husband yet. I played dumb. Oh, but your son is already in grade school. She took a sip of her coffee, buying time. My son is from my first marriage. I was young, made a bad choice. She set the mug down and pulled a thick, leather-bound album from the coffee table drawer. her smile returning full force. But we are getting married soon. Look, we just got our engagement photos back. She handed me the album. My fingertips were ice cold. On the cover, wearing a bespoke white tuxedo, was Colin. The bridal boutique in the background was the one I had chosen. The one he had bailed on me 3 times to visit. I blinked hard, forcing the moisture back, and slowly turned the heavy pages. We actually just shot these last month, she chattered happily. He picked the boutique and the photographer. I didn't have to lift a finger. Of course he did. Because I had spent an entire week, staying up until 2 a.m. every night, researching, reading reviews, and coordinating the vendors. And my dress, the dramatic sweeping white gown with the cathedral train that I had fallen in love with, was draped over another woman's body. I had sent Colin a link to that exact dress. It was still pinned in our text thread. Colin, look at the train on this. I have to walk down the aisle to you in this dress. 12 hours later he had replied, whatever you want, babe. I took a shallow, shaky breath. Have you set a date? When is the big day? In 2 weeks. The 5th of next month. Ha, the day before my wedding. Colin, you absolute monster. Could I come? I asked, my voice terrifyingly calm. Heather looked surprised. I'm getting married soon myself, I lied smoothly. I'm so nervous about the flow of the ceremony. I'd love to just sit in the back and watch how it all works. Get a feel for it. She hesitated, glancing at the blue binder on the table. I mean, since you helped us out. She smiled, her eyes crinkling. Sure. Why not? I smiled back. A genuine, terrifying smile. Wonderful. I'll be sure to bring you a very special gift. I exchanged a few more meaningless pleasantries before walking out of the house that should have been mine. When I got back to my apartment, I plugged a USB drive into my laptop and methodically downloaded every single photo, post, and comment from Heather's timeline. When it was done, I sat in the dim light of my living room, staring at the blank wall. Colin and I had been together for 5 years. He used to tell me that the only reason he had stayed single through his 20s was because the universe was saving him for me. And I had believed him. How could I not? He remembered my coffee order, my allergies, my favorite obscure indie bands. If I was sick, no matter the time or distance, he would show up at my door. When I traveled for work, he would stay on the phone with me until I fell asleep in lonely hotel rooms. With him, I didn't have to be the strong, independent woman I was at work. I could just be soft. But it was all a performance. Later that evening, the front door unlocked. Colin walked in, holding a massive bouquet of blue baby's breath. Margot, he smiled, dropping his keys on the console. Your favorite. Come on, don't be mad at me anymore. Cleared my schedule. We're going to the boutique tomorrow to look at dresses. He hadn't bought me flowers in months. I looked at the baby's breath. It was beautiful. But underneath the faint floral scent was the overwhelming, unmistakable smell of lavender laundry detergent. Heather's detergent. It was almost comical. I took the flowers and set them casually on the dining table. Colin, I said softly, do you really still want to marry me? A flicker of panic crossed his eyes, but he masked it instantly. He pulled me into his chest, wrapping his arms around me, and fumbled to clasp a necklace around my neck. Did you hear some office gossip or something? He kissed the top of my head. I only love you, Margot. No one else even comes close. I breathed in the lavender clinging to his shirt. My throat seized tight. I opened my mouth to speak, but his phone rang. A custom ringtone. A little heart emoji popped up on the screen. Colin practically shoved me away to grab it. As he moved, the unremoved price tag dangling from the cheap necklace scraped sharply across my collarbone. I hissed in pain. What? Colin barked into the phone, his entire demeanor shifting to absolute panic. Do not open the door. I'm coming right now. He was already walking backward toward the front door. Put the phone on speaker. Let the guy outside hear my voice. He didn't even look at me as he walked out, slamming the door behind him. I wanted to laugh. I really did. But as I looked down at the clearance tag dangling from the cheap metal on my chest, the tears finally came. They fell hot and fast, heavy drops hitting the hardwood. 5 years. It felt like someone had taken a dull, rusted knife and sawed it through my sternum. There was no blood, but the agony was absolute. I had truly believed I was going to hand the rest of my life over to this man. Colin didn't come home that night. I didn't call to ask where he was. The next morning my phone rang. It was him. I assumed he was calling to cancel our dress appointment again. But the second I answered, his voice came through the speaker, tight and accusatory. Margot, I just saw you in Heather's phone contacts. Why the hell are you adding her on Facebook? I told you she's just a colleague. Can you stop being so paranoid and stop harassing her? I stared out the window at the gray sky. Did you not look at the chat history? He paused. No. But Heather has had a hard life. If you have a problem, you come to me. Don't go bullying her. The blatant, desperate protection in his voice made my stomach turn. In the background, I heard Heather's voice. Who is it, babe? No one, Colin said quickly. Telemarketer. The line went dead. The dial tone echoed in my quiet apartment, chilling me to the bone. A minute later a text came through. Don't overthink this. I just feel bad for her. Something came up at work. I have to travel for the next week. Go to the dress fitting by yourself. Okay, I replied. Then I picked up my laptop. I canceled the bridal boutique deposit. I canceled the caterer. I texted my parents and told them the wedding was off. When they frantically called to ask why, I simply told them I would explain everything soon. I was canceling my wedding. But Colin, I was absolutely going to attend yours. True to his word, Colin didn't come home for a week. He still texted me his usual, sickeningly sweet daily updates. It's going to rain today, don't forget your umbrella, babe. An hour later I refreshed my Facebook feed and saw a photo of Colin, shielding Heather from the rain with his jacket as they ran to the Volvo. I didn't reply. I just screenshotted it and added it to the folder. A week later he came home, bringing me cheap souvenirs from his business trip. Every piece of clothing in his suitcase reeked of lavender. I acted like I didn't smell a thing. I threw the souvenirs in the trash the moment he left the room. I played the part of the docile fiancé perfectly. Until the day of their wedding. I didn't wear makeup. I wore a plain dark trench coat. I slipped into the grand ballroom of the hotel, and sat at a small table in the darkest corner of the room. From the floral arrangements to the lighting cues, to the processional music. I knew every single detail of this wedding by heart. Because it was mine. Colin stood at the altar, wearing the bespoke tuxedo I had flown to New York to have fitted for him. He looked handsome, dashing, staring lovingly at the double doors. The music swelled. The doors opened. Heather stepped into the light. She was wearing the strapless, diamond-encrusted ball gown with the cathedral train. I had booked that dress a month in advance. I had stayed up for 3 nights straight, on video calls with the designer, debating the exact placement of the Swarovski crystals on the bodice. It fit her perfectly now. They had altered it to her measurements. But then my eyes trailed up from the dress to the crown of her head. All the blood in my body turned to ice. My nails dug so hard into my palms they broke the skin. It took every ounce of self-control I possessed not to rush the aisle and tear it off her. She was wearing my grandmother's veil. The vintage lace veil my grandmother had hand-stitched for me before she passed away. If you looked closely at the hem, there were 2 tiny embroidered stick figures, a tall one and a short one. My grandmother and me. On the night of her funeral, Colin had gotten down on one knee in my childhood bedroom, draped that veil over my shoulders, and swore to God that he would be my shelter for the rest of my life. And now, it was pinned to the head of a woman he had been sleeping with for months. How could he? How dared he? My jaw ached from clenching it. A single furious tear slipped down my cheek. Heather's little boy, dressed in a matching mini tuxedo, carried her train as she walked down the aisle. Under the glittering chandeliers, they looked like a picture-perfect romance. The ceremony began. The ring exchange. The groom has designed a truly one-of-a-kind ring. The officiant's voice boomed over the speakers. A piece a man only commissions once in his lifetime. The inside of the band is engraved with the merging of their initials, a symbol of their unique, destined love. The massive projectors on the walls flashed a macro photo of the diamond ring. Engraved on the inside were the letters H and C, my initials. I looked down at my own hand, pulled the simple gold band he had given me off my finger, and squeezed it in my fist until the metal bit into my skin. Then came the vows. Colin took the microphone, his voice thick with practiced emotion. Heather. After all the wrong turns, it was always you. He paused, looking deeply into her eyes. I lost you when we were young and stupid. I left you to suffer the harshness of the world alone. But fate brought you back to me. You are my second chance, and I swear to you, I will never let you go again. He actually choked up. A perfect, glistening tear fell from his eye. The guests around me began to whisper. Gosh, Colin really is a saint. A woman at the next table murmured. You know he paid to build a new house for her parents back in their hometown? I heard her ex-husband used to beat her. Another whispered. Colin stepped in and protected her. Almost got killed doing it. He's a real-life hero. A pair of star-crossed lovers. Thank God they finally got their happy ending. Sitting in the shadows listening to the murmurs, I felt like the villain in a movie. The evil witch who had tried to keep the destined lovers apart. I reached into my purse. My fingers brushed against the stack of elegant, embossed wedding invitations. The ones Colin had painstakingly handwritten for our guests. The main lights dimmed. On stage, Colin lifted my grandmother's veil and leaned in for a soft cinematic kiss. My hand moved to my chest, pressing against my sternum. It didn't hurt anymore. The agony was gone, replaced by a wild, terrifying electric adrenaline. My heart was beating a war drum. I pulled the wireless microphone I had bribed the A/V guy for out of my bag. I stood up. And now, my voice blasted through the ballroom speakers, echoing off the high ceilings, shattering the romantic silence. Please direct your attention to the screens to witness the groom's true love story. The sudden amplified boom of my voice cut through the soft romantic hum of the violin processional like a sheet of iron falling onto concrete. At the altar, Colin's head snapped toward the back of the room. His body went instantly rigid, the microphone in his hand letting out a sharp, piercing squeal. A feedback. Beside him, Heather gasped, her fingers tightening around her bouquet of white roses as she tried to peer through the dim theatrical lighting of the ballroom. What is the meaning of this? A voice called out from the VIP tables near the front. Colin's father, a man who valued family legacy above all else. A/V team. Cut the microphone. But the A/V team didn't cut the power. The young technician I had handed $5,000 in cash to 3 hours ago had already locked the control booth door from the inside and started the playback sequence. The massive projection screens on either side of the floral arch did not return to the photo of the ring. Instead, they flickered once and then a split screen display appeared in high-definition glare. On the left side of the screen was a calendar view of the last 6 months, populated with my private text threads with Colin. Margot, I'm stuck at the regional office in Chicago. Flights are grounded due to the storm. I'm so sorry I'm missing the cake tasting. I love you. Date, September 14th, 4:12 p.m. On the right side of the screen was a Facebook post from Heather's timeline, dated exactly September 14th, 4:30 p.m. It was a photo of Colin wearing a linen shirt, laughing as he smeared mango frosting onto Heather's cheek at a boutique hotel downtown. Caption. He drove 3 hours in the rain just to make sure I didn't spend my birthday alone. My hero. The ballroom went absolutely suffocatingly quiet. The quiet was so intense that you could hear the soft rustling of the silk ribbons on the floral arrangements. As the air conditioning turned on, Colin. Heather's voice came through her lapel microphone, a small trembling whisper that echoed off the high ceilings. What? What is that? Colin didn't answer her. His face had gone from a healthy suntan gold to a sickly translucent gray. He took a step backward, his eyes fixed on the screen. As the slide transitioned, the next slide was a PDF of a bank transfer statement from my private trust fund. Sender, Helen Margot Vance. Amount, $450,000. Transaction description, construction and renovation escrow 101 Maple Drive. Beside it was the corresponding bank statement from Colin's personal account, showing the exact same $450,000 entering his account, followed by a direct wire transfer 24 hours later to a mortgage company under the reference payoff Heather Wright's parents' residence, Oak Creek Estates. Helen Margot was my full legal name. To Colin I was Margot, but to the bank and to the legal registries I was Helen. The H&C engraved on the inside of the ring that was currently sitting in a velvet box at the altar, had been designed by me under my legal initials, Helen and Colin. He hadn't even bothered to change the engraving. He had simply handed my custom-designed ring to another woman, hoping she would assume the H stood for Heather. Your partner didn't buy that house to give you a fairy tale, Heather, I said, my voice steady, cool, and carrying a terrifyingly flat authority through the ballroom speakers. I stepped out from the dark shadow of the column, letting the perimeter spotlights catch the dark fabric of my trench coat. I unbuttoned the coat, letting it slide from my shoulders to reveal the simple, elegant black dress underneath. I walked down the center aisle, my heels clicking in a slow, rhythmic cadence against the polished marble. He bought that house with my inheritance, I said, looking directly at the bride. The Volvo you're driving? It was paid for by my insurance settlement. After he lied and told me he totaled it on the interstate. The dress you're wearing was paid for by my credit card. And the veil. I stopped 10 feet from the altar steps. I looked up at my grandmother's hand-stitched lace veil, pinned to the head of a woman who was currently trembling so hard her bouquet was shedding petals onto the floor. The veil belongs to my dead grandmother, I said. And I would like it back. Colin took 3 rapid steps down the altar stairs, his hands reaching out as if he could physically block the screens or push me out of the room. Margot, stop, he hissed, his voice a desperate, panicking whisper. You're insane. You're having a breakdown. Security. Where is the security? The security team is currently at the front entrance, Colin, I said, not even looking at him. They are busy speaking with 2 detectives from the Financial Crimes Division. I filed the grand larceny and embezzlement reports yesterday morning. A collective, sharp intake of breath rippled through the guests. Colin's father stood up, his face dark with rage. Colin, what is she talking about? Is this true? Dad, no. She's lying. She's vindictive because I broke off our engagement. Colin yelled, turning to the crowd, his hands gesturing wildly. She's been stalking us. She's obsessed. Obsessed. I clicked a button on the remote control in my hand. The projector screens changed again. This time it was a video. It was the security footage from my apartment's hallway from 3 nights ago. The timestamp read 11:45 p.m., the night Colin had claimed to be on a business trip. In the video, Colin was standing outside my door holding a bouquet of Blue baby's breath, kissing me on the forehead and whispering, I only love you, Margot. No one else even comes close. The camera zoomed in on his face. The resolution was crystal clear. Heather turned to look at him. The tears that had been welling in her eyes finally broke, tracing long black mascara lines down her cheeks, smudging the flawless makeup I had spent weeks coordinating with the artist. You were with her? She whispered, her voice cracking. 3 nights ago? You told me you were at a charity gala for the hospital. You said you had to stay at the hotel. Heather, listen to me, Colin stammered, grabbing her hands. She set me up. She's manipulating the footage. I'm not manipulating anything, Colin, I said, stepping onto the first stair of the altar. I looked at Heather. She looked fragile, her eyes wide with the absolute ruin of the happiest day of her life. She was a single mother who had believed a charming man had stepped in to save her and her son from a hard life. She wasn't the mastermind of this betrayal. She was just the parasite's host, fed on the blood of another woman's hard work. He didn't save you from your ex-husband, Heather, I said, my voice softening, just enough to carry a heavy, chilling pity. The heroic fight he got into to protect you? The one where he almost got killed. The police report is on the screen behind you. He got into a bar fight with his bookie over a $50,000 gambling debt. He used my name and my address to register at the hospital so the collections wouldn't trace back to his own accounts. Heather turned her head, her eyes scanning the official police document projected on the wall. And your son, I continued, looking down at the little boy in the mini tuxedo, who was now clutching his mother's dress, his eyes wide with fear. Colin didn't skip work to support him at sports day because he loves him. He skipped work because he had already been suspended from the accounting department for financial irregularities. He was using your son as an excuse to avoid his HR hearings. Colin. Heather's voice was barely a squeak. She looked at the man she was about to marry, and for the first time she saw him clearly. She saw the cheap, frantic desperation beneath the bespoke tuxedo. She saw the sweat soaking through the collar of his shirt. She saw the absolute crushing ruin of the life she thought she had built. Slowly, her hands trembling, she reached up to her head. She unpinned the vintage lace veil, her fingers fumbling with the bobby pins, until they tore a few strands of her hair. She pulled it off her head, holding it out to me like an offering of peace. I didn't know, she sobbed, her chest heaving. I swear to you, Helen, I didn't know. I stepped forward and took the veil from her hands. The soft, antique lace felt cool and heavy against my skin. I folded it carefully, reverently, and tucked it over my arm. I know you didn't, I said. But you do now. The double doors of the ballroom burst open. For police officers in uniform, led by a detective in a plain gray suit, strode down the center aisle. The guests scrambled to move their chairs out of the way, the romantic, elegant atmosphere of the wedding completely shattered by the sharp, clinical authority of the law. Colin Miller? The detective asked, stopping at the foot of the altar. Colin tried to run. He bolted toward the side exit behind the altar, his leather shoes slipping on the polished marble. But the second exit was already blocked by 2 more officers. Mr. Miller, the detective said, his voice echoing off the walls. You are under arrest for grand larceny, financial fraud, and embezzlement of corporate funds from the regional accounting department. You have the right to remain silent. As the cold steel of the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, the bespoke white tuxedo looked ridiculously out of place. He struggled weakly, his eyes darting to his father, then to Heather, and finally to me. Margot, please, he screamed, his voice raw and ugly as the officers dragged him down the aisle. We can talk about this. I'll pay it back. I'll sign the house over to you. Don't do this to me. I didn't answer him. I stood on the altar stairs, my grandmother's veil tucked safely over my arm, watching him go. The guests began to exit the ballroom in a quiet, frantic rush, eager to escape the scandal. Within 10 minutes, the grand multi-$1,000 ballroom was empty, save for the floral arrangements, the half-eaten cake, and the 3 of us. Heather sat on the altar stairs, her head buried in her hands, her white ball gown spreading around her like a deflated balloon. Her son sat beside her, his small hand resting on her shoulder. I walked over to her. The house at 101 Maple Drive is legally in my name, I said, my voice quiet. The deed Colin gave you was a forgery. He used a dummy title company to print the documents Sophie bought at the school market. Heather didn't look up. I have nowhere to go, she whispered. I quit my apartment. I spent all my savings on the decorations for this joke. You have 30 days, I said. I won't evict you until you find a place for your son. But after 30 days, the house will be put on the market. She nodded slowly, her shoulders shaking with silent, exhausted sobs. And the dress? I added, looking down at the diamond-encrusted ball gown. Keep. You can sell it to help pay for your new apartment. Doesn't fit me. Anyway. I turned and walked out of the ballroom, my heels clicking on the marble floor. One last time. 2 weeks later, the morning sun was bright and cold. I parked my car outside the house at 101 Maple Drive. The driveway was empty. The silver Volvo SUV was gone, sold by the dealership after the lease papers were proven to be fraudulent. I walked up the front steps, unlocked the door with my own key, and stepped inside. The house was quiet. The cream-colored boucle sofa and the geometric rug were still there, but the air felt different. It was no longer a stage for another woman's life. It was just an empty house waiting to be cleared. I walked into the kitchen, made myself a cup of black coffee, and walked out onto the balcony. The wicker swing chair was still there, surrounded by the vibrant, blooming kalanchoe flowers. I sat down, taking a slow sip of my coffee, feeling the warm sun on my face. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Marcus, my attorney. Colin's father has offered to settle the civil suit out of court to avoid further public scandal. They are offering to pay you the full $450,000 plus an additional $100,000 in damages in exchange for you dropping the secondary civil claims. The criminal charges will still stand, of course. I stared at the screen. Accept it, I typed back. I closed the phone and set it on the small table beside the chair. I looked out over the quiet, manicured lawns of Oak Creek Estates. It was a beautiful neighborhood, the premier place in the county, but I knew I would never live here. The walls of this house were stained with 5 years of lies, and no amount of new paint or high-end furniture could wash the smell of lavender laundry detergent out of the closets. I would sell the place next week. I would take the settlement money, my inheritance, and my grandmother's veil, and I would move to New York or perhaps Chicago or somewhere far away where the streets didn't have names like Maple Drive. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my grandmother's veil. I ran my fingers over the delicate, hand-stitched lace, tracing the tiny, embroidered stick figures at the hem. I got it back, Grandma, I whispered to the quiet air. The wind blew across the balcony, rustling the leaves of the kalanchoe flowers, carrying the faint, sweet scent of spring. I closed my eyes, taking a deep, long breath, and for the first time in 5 years the air inside my lungs felt entirely clean.